to what is needed to be successful in the game.
Very good. Then let's show the video.
And that will be interesting to see how much football has changed in the last 4 years.
Actually more, I would say, pre-analysis from the tournament, from what you can expect.
Well, what it can help us is to understand if we can take that information and predict a little bit more what's next. So always looking forward. Before it was always kind of looking back, so what happened, in the last tournament or what happened 2 or 4 years ago. Now this tournament gives us, with those tools, gives us the opportunity to actually evaluate it right now and actually use it already for the next game, if you want to kind of look forward to it right away. You play the group stage in every three days, which is for a coaching staff. It's brutal. It's not only for the players, obviously, physically and mentally, but also the coaches to prepare the next game right away. And this information helps them to prepare them better. So it's something that is always kind of meant to be in the present and in the near future, and this is exciting.
Yes, it's exciting as well, I think, because it's a little bit the tournament of a last chance for the players who dominated the football world in the last 15 years. It's now or never. And it will be interesting as well to see, analyze their individual performances. And all the big players come with that pressure on their shoulders, and it's interesting as well to see how they cope with it.
Very good. So don't forget, all this information will be available on the FIFA's training center. You have here the link. You can follow all this information during the tournament. And now we are going to pass to a few questions. So please, anyone?
You said there, Arsene, that you expect higher defensive line, a higher block than normal. Are there any other trends that you've seen in football over the last 18 months to 2 years that will define this tournament, do you think?
I think so. I think the pressing has become absolutely universal now, and I was quite surprised when I came to watch the Arab Cup in November, how quickly the information circulates now. The teams play all over the world now. It's pressing high up, counter-pressing very quickly. That pushes the defensive line up, and that's why the long balls behind the defensive lines will be interesting to analyze, how the transition, how important it is to be available quickly when you win the ball, how much the quality of the first pass when you win the ball to avoid pressing will be important. Maybe we'll find out as well how important the dribble to get out of the first pressing will be important. This will be interesting data to analyze during the World Cup.
Jurgen, any comment on this?
You're a striker. You play in a different land,
Well, I think there's always a further development. I mean, things, move forward, and the game became faster. They became on an organizational side, almost was perfection in the last years. I mean, it's fascinating to see the trends. The trends usually are given to you by the top teams in the Champions League. Then usually national team managers follow up on those trends, and you see it then the next couple of weeks here at the World Cup. But it's definitely for us, just to analyze and evaluate those games. It's going to be interesting to see how many teams will play their way out of the bags and out of trouble, and how many teams maybe go back to a bit of an older style and say, you know what, we don't bother with this whole out of the back because they pressure us so perfect now, we just hit it long. So it will be interesting to see how they utilize the number 9 in this tournament, because I was a former number 9, and I really suffer when I hear the word false number 9. It really bothers me. So I hope there's kind of the opportunity for some number 9s to get some goals here, and I'm looking especially at Harry Kane maybe. No, we're going to see definitely a continuation of the trend set in the Champions League, but the game always moves forward. It gets faster, it gets more challenging for coaches and for players.
I realize now, Jurgen, that you were quite an innovator. You were good at pressing.
Pressing?
But it's a bit not completely the same way as club football. At club football, the guys who don't press have now been all sidelined. In a country, sometimes you have to accommodate a little bit more because you have the best players of a country, and sometimes you have to find more compromise than in a club.
Very good. Next question here. Aris Gabilondo asks on the right.
You said there, Arsene, that you expect higher defensive line, a higher block than normal. Are there any other trends that you've seen in football over the last 18 months to 2 years that will define this tournament, do you think?
I think so. I think the pressing has become absolutely universal now, and I was quite surprised when I came to watch the Arab Cup in November, how quickly the information circulates now. The teams play all over the world now. It's pressing high up, counter-pressing very quickly. That pushes the defensive line up, and that's why the long balls behind the defensive lines will be interesting to analyze, how the transition, how important it is to be available quickly when you win the ball, how much the quality of the first pass when you win the ball to avoid pressing will be important. Maybe we'll find out as well how important the dribble to get out of the first pressing will be important. This will be interesting data to analyze during the World Cup.
Jurgen, any comment on this?
You're a striker. You play in a different land, you know.
Well, I think there's always a further development. I mean, things, move forward, and the game became faster. They became on an organizational side, almost was perfection in the last years. I mean, it's fascinating to see the trends. The trends usually are given to you by the top teams in the Champions League. Then usually national team managers follow up on those trends, and you see it then the next couple of weeks here at the World Cup. But it's definitely for us, just to analyze and evaluate those games. It's going to be interesting to see how many teams will play their way out of the bags and out of trouble, and how many teams maybe go back to a bit of an older style and say, you know what, we don't bother with this whole out of the back because they pressure us so perfect now, we just hit it long. So it will be interesting to see how they utilize the number 9 in this tournament, because I was a former number 9, and I really suffer when I hear the word false number 9. It really bothers me. So I hope there's kind of the opportunity for some number 9s to get some goals here, and I'm looking especially at Harry Kane maybe. No, we're going to see definitely a continuation of the trend set in the Champions League, but the game always moves forward. It gets faster, it gets more challenging for coaches and for players.
I realize now, Jurgen, that you were quite an innovator. You were good at pressing.
Pressing?
But it's a bit not completely the same way as club football. At club football, the guys who don't press have now been all sidelined. In a country, sometimes you have to accommodate a little bit more because you have the best players of a country, and sometimes you have to find more compromise than in a club.
Very good. Next question here. Aris Gabilondo asks on the right.
Basically, if I understand well the question, will the possession be important?
If possession and free kicks and...
Well, yes. The free kicks usually in a tournament are important because it's 30% of the goals on average. I still think when you coach, you can never say to your team, I don't want the ball. You have always to encourage the team to want the ball, and but sometimes you're so much technically better that you have a lot of possession, but without going anywhere because the opponent is defending very well, and you can be hurt on the set piece or on transition. But I still think at the end of the day, the teams who go into the final last four will be teams who have a very good technical level and a good level of possession.
Well, I think in general, what we saw 4 years ago in Russia was certainly a mix of, mixed of approaches. If you look at Belgium and at France 4 years ago, they were waiting basically for counter-breaking you, for counter-attacking you. Meanwhile, a team like Spain will always be culturally, traditionally trying to have ball possession-based games, strategy. I'm curious to see this year, how it will play out, because in a certain way, the playing style of each team that we see now the next 4 weeks here in Qatar is a reflection of their culture, of their beliefs, of their mentality. And I'm curious to see if we find strikers again, back to the strikers, that are capable to basically break the lines, to break the end line, to go between defenders and score goals in a more traditional way. But at the end of the day, it's always a reflection of where they're coming from, what country it is, and there's no other better place in the world than watching a World Cup, really, to understand what the cultural elements are behind the team by watching the way they play.
You have to develop a game where you can use the strengths of your players. A team like France with Mbappé is comfortable to play on counter-attack and leave the ball to the opponent, but you have to be good in defending. And in the last World Cup, they were not the team with the highest level of possession, but in transition they were the most dangerous, because they had players who could play that style. So every team will have to find a style that suits the quality of their players. But like Jurgen said, traditionally Spain will want the ball. It's their culture, and you have to respect as well the culture of your country.
Very good. Here, second row.
Jurgen, you were world champion as a player and twice a World Cup coach. Now you have a new function. How does it feel? How does it feel to be back at the World Cup, to have some input on football, and what would be the success for you in this function with this group?
Well, when you're in the game, no matter in what role, player, coach, analyst on TV, or now being part of the technical study group with FIFA, it's always a pleasure. It's always fun to be around with people that are here, and you get to see the games, and you learn from every game, you learn from every conversation you have with other coaches, other people. And I'm looking forward to a tournament, an exciting tournament, because I believe this tournament obviously has some different challenges for all the teams that came into Qatar now. Most of the players coming straight out of their regular seasons, especially if you look at the European seasons just finished a week ago. But I believe that we're going to see a tournament of very, very high quality, because the players didn't need another preparation like they usually do before a World Cup. They have a 4-week break and go start all over again. They are fresh, they are hungry. I think really we see high quality games, and for me personally, and for all of us coaches that are here, this is what we live for. We live for that excitement. We live for the emotional side of the game and the technical, tactical approaches and qualities that all of the players and the coaches bring to the table. So I'm sure that we all will really enjoy the next 4 weeks here.
Very good. Umaid there on the right now, next to him. Yeah.
Thank you. Jurgen, question for you. You just said that players are coming out of the regular seasons, but there have been so many injuries, and they're probably fatigued as well. So you still expect a high-quality football World Cup?
Yes, I do. I expect a high quality. I mean, injuries is always sad. Every injury to hear is a sad message. especially the rhythm they played now the last couple of months in the top leagues, especially the top leagues in Europe. You know, they played literally 3 games a week, and it's tough. It's tough on everyone, and the tournament will be tough too. The tournament will be demanding. It's group stage every 3 days, so physically they have to go to their limits. There's no doubt about it, but I think at the end of the day, they are pleased also that they didn't need to go in another preparation period of 4 weeks, and that they can play this tournament now right away. Is it different if it's, you know, obviously it's now in the winter time for the Europeans especially, not so for the South Americans, but the top South American players are in Europe as well. So no, but these challenges, all the teams have the same challenges coming in now. And I don't think that any of those teams will use them as an excuse if it doesn't work out the way they want it to work out. So there are challenges with this tournament, but I think we're going to see really, really good games, exciting games, and hopefully attacking-minded games.
Very good.
With so much focus on pressing and the game being about transition and error, do you have any concern for what it will do to maybe kind of players with more poise, midfield passers, and those sort of players that kind of rely more on craft? Is that something that could evolve out of the game?
But the midfield pass,
Can you repeat?
Sorry, with so much focus on pressing and transition and error, do you have any concern for the evolution of players with a bit more kind of poise and patience, like a Xavi Hernandez? Do you think that's something that could go out of the game?
I don't think so. I believe that the lack of our sport is that it is a technical sport. And despite all the increase of the intensity, if you look at the end of a game, who made the difference, who made you win the game, are the players who have a vision and the technical ability to realize their vision. And where I agree with you, badly used science can be detrimental to risk, because the players can be too conscious of the data and not anymore play with freedom enough. That's why the science of the game will have to be used well to encourage the players to keep their level of taking audacious decisions, you know. And if the science is not used in a positive way, it could be detrimental to the quality of the game.
The gentleman on the back there, please.
Bonjour Arsene, bonjour Jurgen Klinsmann. Je suis Légitien Tu, je travaille pour le site www.africafootunited.com. Alors, Monsieur Arsene Wenger, vous avez analysé forcément les rencontres des pays africains, mais on se rend bien compte que l'Afrique, malheureusement, n'a pas franchi le second tour. Qu'est-ce qui a manqué à l'Afrique lors de la dernière édition de la Coupe du Monde? Est-ce que tactiquement, collectivement ou individuellement, c'était limité en Afrique? Là, je demande votre avis. Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour que l'Afrique puisse, pourquoi pas, rattraper le niveau des équipes européennes, pourquoi pas sud-américaines? Merci beaucoup.
Je vous remercie pour cette question, parce que l'Afrique est un continent qui me tient beaucoup à cœur. Et je pense, je vous donnerai une réponse très simple, c'est le manque d'opportunités. Et ça tombe très bien, parce que demain nous donnerons une conférence pour montrer ce que nous voulons faire pour les pays dans les continents qui n'ont pas la même qualité d'éducation ou les chances et les mêmes opportunités que d'autres. Donc je crois que l'Afrique a un potentiel énorme. Elle a un désavantage, c'est qu'il n'y a pas autant de compétition de jeunes en Afrique, ni de centres de formation de jeunes en Afrique que dans d'autres continents. Et puis, n'oublions pas non plus que pour l'instant, elle n'a que 5 qualifiés pour la Coupe du Monde. Et qu'avec la prochaine Coupe du Monde, ils vont avoir 9,5, donc ils pourront avoir 10 pays qui pourront aller à la Coupe du Monde, alors qu'ils sont 54 pays. En Europe, on est 55, on a 13 pays qui vont à la Coupe du Monde. Donc au niveau nombre, l'Afrique a un désavantage, et au niveau opportunité des enfants, elle a un désavantage aujourd'hui que nous voulons combler avec la FIFA.
Thanks. Next, Graham here.
Thank you. Graham Dunbar from the Associated Press. A question for Jurgen, for your experience of preparing teams for 2 World Cups when you had the traditional sort of 2 weeks training camp at home, probably at least 2 warm-up games. What would you see as the challenges for the coaches preparing for this World Cup? And should we be expecting maybe some surprises in the first round of games? Would you expect to see underdog teams maybe being a bit more adventurous in the first game if they see a vulnerability in the teams that haven't had so much preparation time?
Well, it's a challenge for all the teams, obviously, coming in with most of the nations just with 1 week of preparation. Most of them, some have a little bit more, depending on their schedule in their domestic competitions. For the coaches themselves, it's challenging, but it's also, I see there are also some positives in there, because you take them out of their club system and you go right away in the tournament. You don't need to kind of build them physically anymore. They are in a full swing. So it's a lot down to the mental aspect of the game, to get them really zoomed in, to get them focused, to get them in the right balance of energy, and then obviously to have a positive approach into the tournament. I think, as you said, I think there is room for surprises. I think this could be a World Cup of surprises, because if some of the kind of underdogs nations, if it's maybe an African nation, if it's an Asian nation, team, if they're courageous, I think you can go actually far in this tournament. I think this is not a tournament to kind of to sit back and defend. I think it's a tournament that really invites you to be courageous and go forward. I don't think that you go far if you just have a very defensive approach in this tournament now, because the teams are fit, the teams are hungry, and they want to get going. And thankfully, it starts tomorrow, and they get going. So there might be a few surprises that we can see in the next few weeks. Go ahead, Arsene.
Well, it's down to them. When you analyze the way people use the substitutes, most of the time there's a small difference, because when you had only 3 substitutes, I think the first player on average came in on 72 minutes. Today, the first player with 5 substitutes comes in at 67 minutes, so there is not a huge difference. The last 2, 4 and 5, when they come in, most of the time it's between 80 and 90 minutes. The only difference is when there's a big difference in the score early on in the game. Then some people go into very risky solutions, and I think it gives you more tactical flexibility and more chances to change the game.
Martin, there on the left.
I mean, there will be always different approaches. There will be always, different ideas from coaches. Not necessarily in the way you put the systems together and the formations that obviously you get the team sheet there before the games, and you see the tactical lineup and formation. I think there are always ways for coaches to improvise things within those systems. So, in whatever movement patterns they follow, new ideas of set plays, set pieces, corner kicks, free kicks, variations, there will be always something that people come out which is kind of new or refreshing. And I hope that we see some of those also in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, the trends in the last, in the recent years have been that technically the defenders have to be more involved in the build-up, and especially the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper has become a master in distribution, and so it's interesting to see how the national teams will cope with that. And the strikers have to defend more, and so the opposite quality of where they play has increased a lot. It will be interesting to see how that is transferred into the national team.
Here to the right, yeah.
Hi. Jurgen mentioned the Champions League and trends being set a little while ago. Now, given that this tournament's happening with, like you said, in 7 days of the European season pausing, do you see, can we expect a little more sophisticated football for national teams, given that we pretty much accept that football at the club level is more sophisticated than you can see at the national teams? Do you think that's changing a bit this time around?
I mean, I hope so. I hope that they take this freshness, that take that energy and that rhythm that they have, this rhythm of the last 3-4 months straight into the World Cup. That's my hope, And I mean, I've been on both sides coaching, and I tell you, if you with a national team play even just a friendly against a club team, you will lose. A club team, the rhythm of a club team is far more detailed, is far more in tune than of a national team. Now, even for this World Cup now, obviously, with 7 days preparation, it's tough on the coaches, to come up and give them a right-away flow. But I think teams could be at an advantage that maybe come in with a bigger block of players from the same team. Looking at my own country, Germany, I see that as a very positive, that you have a very strong Bayern Munich block coming into that group, into that national team, and they could maybe put their stamp on that team, similar probably to the Spanish situation. So, but I think it will help them.
I would say that as well, that the club football today is a consequence of a globalization and of the financial potential of the clubs. And it has been concentrated to a small number of teams who can survive at the top level. The national team football is today still the consequence of the quality of the work that the countries do inside their country in developing the players. And we see that the differences have been reduced a lot between the teams who educate well their players, in Europe especially, Just to remind you that Italy is world champion, and 1 year later they didn't qualify for the World Cup. That means the differences between national teams has been reduced a lot. And I believe when you speak about an interesting World Cup, because of that, when you analyze the groups, it's very difficult to predict. Tomorrow starts the World Cup. We have Qatar, Ecuador, Holland, and Senegal. I personally cannot tell you who will come out there. That means why it can be very interesting, because the differences, it's not like in the 70s where you could win 7-1. Today it's difficult to predict. That means the teams who have worked very well to develop their players, the countries.
We're going to take 2 more questions. First, the gentleman in green there.
Fang an. No, obviously it's a little bit different. If you coach a game, from against your home country, from the country for the country that you that you live in. So that was very special for me, obviously, in Brazil 2014. So I enjoyed that very much. Now, I mean, if they would play against each other in this World Cup, you would be very relaxed and watch it from the stand. No problem at all.
Well, for the influence, I would say that Jurgen could certainly agree with me. When you go to a World Cup, the first game becomes very important. Because when you have no preparation, the teams who have an advantage are the teams who have no basic injury in an unexpected way, and who can go straight away into the first game with a full balanced team. So yesterday I had a chat with Mascherano. He told me Argentina lost Lo Celso in the preparation. He's a very important player for us because he balances the team. So that means to lose a play in the last minute can force you to change completely the structure of a team. These teams have then a disadvantage.
Very good. Last one there, to the right. Yes. No, down there.
Sports question for Jurgen. Jurgen, American coaches have traditionally found it quite difficult to get noticed by European clubs and get opportunities there. Do you think that the performance of Greg Berhalter and the US team in this tournament can have a positive impact? Things do seem to be changing, but slowly.
Well, personally, I think it has changed a lot over the last 10, 12 years, you know, how the world looks at American soccer, how the world looks at America as not only from a national team perspective, but also from a developmental point of view, with Major League Soccer now being there over 25 years. So I think there's far more respect now, not only for the players, which now play in Champions League teams here in Europe, but also from the coaching perspective, whether you see some coaches coming through, coaching in different countries in Europe, it has improved a lot. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jurgen. Thank you, Arsene. Thank you, everyone. There will be more opportunities with our experts along the way during this World Cup after each round. And in the meantime, don't forget to check all this amazing and fascinating information on our FIFA Training Center, which is available for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.